and we look forward to hosting Medicare Bees. And thank you, Shachi, for just pushing this and really having. We really appreciate it. And thank you to the parties select out enjoyed it, giving us your time. Very punchy and stupid. Thank you. And so was the for actually making this happen. She is the driving force, along with, of course, many other members of the Nicobar team. And the reason, like she mentioned, that we decided to do this is that Chennai Purukkinare has been doing a lot of things in unexpected spaces. So I want to also ask all the audience present here, how many of you know of the Chennai Purukkinare? Wow, that thing's good. Thank you. So, for those of you, really, who might not have known about it, I'll just give a quick introduction to myself. My name is Shuchi. I'm one of the co-founders of the Chennai Purukkinare. We are also a non-profit arts foundation. And like the name suggests, we are based in Chennai and we work primarily with the medium of photography and in a lot of its expanded forms. And we work with various communities, like we work with Tamil schools, we work with colleges, we work with artists, we work with curators, educators, and anybody who's interested in the medium. We have a center for photography in Chennai, which is called the CPT Lighthouse. And I'm happy to see some familiar faces who have worked with us. And also, we keep doing a lot of programs all through the year. But every 2 to 3 years, we organize a massive international festival of photography in Chennai, which happens in a lot of public spaces. And why did we choose to do that? One, reality. Chennai does not have the kind of galleries that many other cities do, or at least not as large galleries as maybe Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay has. So we wanted to also look at the medium itself. Today, each one of us, whether you're a photographer or not, you are making images. You are taking images. You are engaging with images in some form or the other. And therefore, we wanted to also make sure that the festival is accessible to as many people as possible. So every edition, this time fix the whole edition which is currently on, it will close on this Sunday. And we had hoped that we would have had this conversation a little bit earlier here in Bangalore so that all of you would have had the time, or you still do, these days. So, and Bangalore and Chennai are not far, so you can always just come over the weekend, come and see the exhibitions. Most of the exhibitions are in public spaces, like, 4 exhibitions happening in a mall. Because first we cringed at the idea that, do we want to do it in a mall? But then, come to think of it, the mall already has its own audience, where we don't have to drive audiences, and they are a new audience for art. So they have been engaging you with all the shows on a daily basis, versus galleries which have their own niche audiences, but they go as an event. So we've also been trying to experiment with a lot of spaces. We, of course, also exhibit in heritage spaces. We exhibit in other galleries, of course. And there's a museum in Chennai, the Government Museum in Emmore. That's where there are some fantastic shows. So any of you who plan to visit Chennai, now is the time to book your tickets. I'm also going to jump into welcoming all our speakers here today. I'll do a very, very quick introduction. And as you all know, the title is called Proponents of Photography. And the reason why we thought about bringing all the wonderful people here today, because they all are engaging the tourism in some form or the other. And they all created a beautiful legacy, images around Hoig legacy. So I begin from my right side to introduce Ishita Shah, who's the founder of Curating for Kanju. She's also a historian, and I will let her know the major introduction later. Welcome Ishita, thank you so much for being with us. Right next to me is Suresh Dera. I'm sure many people in the audience already know him. He's built a legacy for Bangalore and for all of us. Because we started the Biennale in 2016, and One Shanti Road and Suresh himself have been working in this space for a very, very long time. And he's the founder of One Shanti Road, which is a beautiful community space. They also offer a lot of residencies and programs, and he will tell you more later about it. That was Suresh and you.
I have online date, Shilpa Krishnan, and Shilpa works with the Museum of Art and Photography here in Bangalore, and she has been working in the education. She leads the educational initiatives at Demand and hope that part. And of course, we come in that conversation later. Subarbu. Hi Cindy, thank you so much for joining us. Ziti is within Srishti School of Art and Design. She works in space of sociology and image making, and it's a very interesting space for us to have a conversation today. So welcome, thank you so much. And last but not least, Indu Anthony is an artist who's living in Bangalore. We have also showed Hindu in our previous editions, including Anne as well as in this version as well. And it was the founder of Kanike Studios, as well as a beautiful initiative called Namakate. And we will now begin with each one of them telling you a little bit about their own journey in a big, brief sort of way, so that all of you can get a little more insight into their backgrounds as well as what they have been creating. So maybe Ishika, we can begin with you.
Science Teach and I Book Design Studio and Benali for having us here. As Shruti said, I represent Fluid Collective Contributing for Culture, but prior to that, I am personally trained as a designer at this started. The journey that we started was setting up Set Takan, which is India's first Takan for architecture and design related material after with Set University. And that led me to working with UNESCO chair at Srishti Institute before it paid Srishti Mahipai. What this did for me is perhaps figure out for myself what practice of curation can also mean, which is stimulating for different communities to come together or become a part of the culture preservation projects, right? So what we sort of call ourselves or what we see as our ethos is that we curate for culture preservation. We basically enable both archiving and curatorial practices, bring in creative processes of creative interpretation, keeping in mind that communities are included or are a part of the process, and how access is then sort of pondered upon but also improvised in the process. So how does preservation become an everyday part of our lives? What we do in this pursuit is we enable two kinds of personal archive projects, family histories, community archivic projects, personal practices, and they end up turning into institutional projects, or they become publications, exhibitions, whatever creative form that the committee or the owner or the custodian wishes to engage in. Personal pursuit in this perhaps has been to discover the ethics of community engagement. How do we not slip the slope? How do we not appropriate this work? How do we not speak on behalf of them, but how do they empower the truth more in this process is pursued? So that's in a nutshell about what we do. So,
thank you. And I run One Shanti Road. It's kind of an informal space. And it got a kind of a watering hole for creative people, because there is, like, it is in the center of the city. So people from the north, south, east, west, we have to cross it one way or the other. So we keep our doors generally open, very open, and we have encouraged many photographers to have chats, have conversations with each other, and also learn from each other about what PRLally happens. And the most important thing is that we've also invited other important curators or artists to come and critique their portfolios. And some of them, the most famous of them, some of you might know. One is Kok Shiva. Does not need an introduction. I think all the photographers I know, then the other one is Sandeep TK, and I'll also show you Madhu's work, who will be doing his based work. And these are few things that happy Shanti Road. The informality has attracted a lot of youngsters to showcase it or engage with each other. I don't teach them, like I'm an amateur photographer, but at the same time I experiment to people, and once in a way say, oh, yeah, people like Pushpa Mara or somebody else who's technically more proficient than other, just be there if they would ask questions, have conversations, etc. So this kind of learning is like learning in the audit canteen. So there's no hierarchy, and nobody is beating down your neck, and there is no agenda. So this allows for a lot of pre-conversation that has encouraged people to be there, showcase their work, and also move ahead. They participate in many residency programs abroad. Many of the others who come for the Bangalore residency to other institute or to other establishments and use photography as part of the engagement with the city or with their own home.
Yes. And this cheaper in Taizim is a bit diversity. As she mentioned, Anshuba, I DTP led education and outreach at Gizimaba Photography, which is essentially about the corner 10 minutes away from here. The Better Young Museum, we basically just down in February. The museum opened in 2023. But I've been with Nat a long time, over 10 years to Bill Point, and have been part of a very young journey to class museum company. As you can see, photography is kind of specifically mentioned in our thing, even though it calls it ticket is part of art. It reflects all the idea that in our connections, the museum has a diverse range of connections in from the 10th century to the contemporary moment, all kinds of mediums from trends such as settings to including photographs. The body that we have photography is actually quite large. And photography is the medium came to India quite early, very close to the actual advent of photography globally. But we don't really have a lot of dedicated spaces or institutions for photography in the country. And partially the idea of earning was also to de-emphasize them a little bit. We do have works that range from the 19th century all the way to the contemporary moment in terms of photography projects. But I also think what a very target selection like app allows us to do work curatorially, not only experientially, but also from the a traditional sense, is that it allows us to make much broader connections and look at photography not only within the context of photography's own history as a media forest practice, but also all of the larger connections of visual culture or historical kind of happenings that that are part of those stories or part of those narratives. In particular, I think it also generate kind of focus side medication goes in terms of looking at young learners. We have about the museum, both in terms of use in colleges and so on. Also talks of people engagement initiatives and projects that are done. And for property, it has a very later this point because it's the GSD today. Everybody feels that this is a bit more of a democratic GM that they have some experience. That's like. So I hope I can sort of build up the initial idea to get it.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you all for being here. It's Isa. Thank you, Chichi, for inviting me. I'm Cindy, and like she mentioned, I'm currently faculty at the Shrishti Mani College City, but I'm not emphasized. Title thing. I'm Reed, I'm sociologist. And so my doctoral thesis, it was submitted to Delhi University in 2018. It's titled Photographers in the Poverty of Sociology and stuff. I think that I really approach photography through the lens of work. So I have been in the process and during a feedback just the questions of different structures that made the photograph possible. Like I wanted to step away from the photograph, but look at what are these connections and collaborations, formal, informal, subtypes, impromptu summits, very temporary, that made the visual possible, and not just make the visual possible, but also make it available for the audience, make it more visible. So yeah, very sociological questions in that sense, and really,
picked on the idea of he's a sociologist, Howard Becker, elaborated with this idea of the art world, all the people that come together and constitute the art world, which all the people familiar with. So yeah, so I've sort of done that, and as part of my tea work, I also, like I said, I coach photography to the lesser work, and I, ethnography methods, which photoxiologists and anthropologists use. I spend time in digital settings where photographers operate. So a photo studio, a publication house, which has a very structured permanent apartment. Also, these skeptic sites where the workers operate somewhere under very poor conditions to get obvious in the downtown. So in these diverse settings, I try to understand the work of all those characters, photographers. Currently I am based Trishti and a scientist in an art and science institute, one way too. Aberration, yes, but we are a handful of us in this creative space. And I get Trishti, what it's done for a while now has, in his pedagogy, part of including on having the social sciences and humanity in conversation with art and design. And I think that's very important. That's also the role, where I come in Shishi. And we talk about that. I get it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Suji, for inviting me.
So I'm an artist. I'm based out of Bangalore, the Nicobar, and 8 years now. I too was artist who wished to curiously visit Pachapi Road, the Watery Board, and very inspired to see a space which was just open, got a lot of artists to come in and just sit together. And there was always a main provide. And I was so prepared, to take that initiative, and we were inspired by that. So me, Vivek Putanap, and Trishani Chatterjee, all three of us came together and decided to do something similar, but we wanted to focus network on analog photography. And we started something called Kanike. Kanike in Kannada means a gift. We really feel Kanike is a gift to us. All three of us are very much at the studio most of the time. All three of us have very distinct, different ways of working. One of the largest lab that we have is the analog lab, where we work with more than 50 old analog photography processes. We now have a factory lab we own past 1 to 2 years. We also have a ceramic and pottery lab. So we work in multiple ways, follow similar thing like and then one of us is inside, the door is open, we invite a lot of people to come in. There are a lot of people just walk in, they see the door open and they walk in. We do a lot of activities in space. And I think one of the things that all of us feel is this idea of bridging communities together. I also opened another name and Kannada Peaks Our Space, which is a space for women to do nothing, which is Kaitia's Bangalore railway station. This has also been operational for now 4 years. So yeah, that's in a nutshell of what I.
Thank you. Also, congratulations once again for showing your fabulous work at the Tianali. It has been getting fabulous response. It seems to be one work in that show, which is a show on women and their practices, the photography, which I have curated for the CPB 4. And in those old work, actually an ongoing work, which is titled Cecilian, is being showed at the Biennale. So any of you are still making your plans, please do come. You get to see a lot of interesting stuff. So why we have it here, I wanted to also have you maybe share a little bit about all of you coming together as individual practitioners and how photography is a source medium per se. But then all of you coming together to sort of perhaps build a cohesive way of living, working, and expanding the medium to various audiences. If you could share how you make this work. So it's a quite interesting. All three of us have absolutely zero art background. Me and Vivek are medical doctors, Krishan's microbiologist, and we just came. I used to hang out with Krishan at Java City, this old cafe that used to be on Church Street. He used to just hang out there. Vivek I met through, there was this film that was being made by of people who have chosen a very different path of work. We were doctors, so we went to be philanthropists. So all of this, I think, I think we all met, but then meant this need for having a space came together. That's how we all came together today. Kanike in the Saparna also, who was part of Kaniki. She's moved out of Bangalore, she's part of as it go. But otherwise, I understand the idea of this medium in Soros, but what relationship Soros is the person who hits the button in the circus, the other person who's in the subject of Soros. So all of these are questions that we can constantly have. And one of the things that he did during the pandemic was make his book for Johnny Bird. And one thing that he decided early on was more watermarking, on more writing, more photograph is what. But we just put together photographs, writings of all of this, just to reflect on what is happening during the whole pandemic. So and one of the things I think at the work is also that somebody has, let's say if it's a paid photograph, somebody's taken a photograph, the other person is giving the market. So I don't know how you can really say it's only my work. I think in that way, always a part of the fields. Thank you. I come to Shilpa because we're speaking. One is a collection of individual practitioners that has come together, and you're with a large museum that has been working in a different form of earlier, with Tasveer being there earlier, and then now much of it has sort of come together to offer a much larger space. As we were mentioning, with education and with interactions, with a lot of programs, with a lot of enthusiasm, which I had a chance to also be part of. How does a large institution like a museum create smaller windows for artists to sort of come and approach a museum? Because very often, who the museum invites is one sort of direction to take. But then you have artists once you approach a museum. Could you share a little bit about how was mapped with that? How was mapped with of accessible the artists? It was very often museums are a bit intimidating. Whenever I have visited, I felt a bit intimidated. And unless and until you know somebody at the museum or in any large institution for that matter, maybe you could share a little bit about this so that you're accessible to artists.
Teacher. So I think in terms of, like you said, this perception that the museum can be an intimidating or a space that is not necessarily accessible is one that we also carry as visitors, not just in terms of art system or the world books, but by and large visitors as well. And I think a lot of research, a lot of dialogue if you read around what these should be and what they can become is often is the idea that museums as a home for objects is a little bit of a colonial idea. And a lot of the 20th century museum or what's around what a 20th century museum was like, 21st now, is really thinking of how you make the museum a space that is warm and inviting and a home for people, right? So he's starting to make it more about visitors, more about your communities engaged with it, and more about the artists as well. In terms of what ways there can be to access museums, I think, for example, we don't actually get people generally having it to us. I would not say that it stops everybody. We also do get very run a lot of our programs, right? So we put artists to talks, workshops, etc. Those also bring in other artists and so on. And I think that creates a space for them to have team interactions with, with us, the team at the museum staff. Do we speak on possibilities for opportunities for conversations on what can happen. We also have had artist residencies. We've been happy come indoors, sort of for the Bankscape agencies. But we had artist residencies, including, for example, one with Agia, who works at bureaucracy as well, there is that girl piece. And her work was originally to, in fact, challenge it what the institutional voice is. So she was playing with this idea that with Cumulus, which is our online platform where you get information about the artworks. And she created her own version called Nimbus, which becomes actually where the interpretative exercise is. So how you look at an image and what the artist can create with it and what can public add to it. So she was kind of very into the fact that it had a way for people to respond. So when you look at the artwork online, there is a way you can suggest an image as a regular person looking at it. So I think having nodes of ways or channels that you build can range from the really small to things that are larger, right? When you have open calls for specific engagements, where you have the possibility for people to approach series of things that are really. And I think that kind of variation, is something that a larger institution can support, because you have you have an range of different activities going on. You can have different modes or ways for people to approach you, or for artists to engage with you, or such time. You also do a lot of collaborations, so that people that we collaborate with also can open up channels for artists to work with us as well. Thank you.
That's actually very interesting. We shared about the new art, or you're working with one thing that concept you already created. I also want to share with our panelists here, please feel free to sort of take the mic and also ask questions. It's not just or share something or add something if you would like to. I probably come to you, Ishila. What beautiful thing when I discovered Creating for Culture was because one of my colleagues was part of your workshops, and I think I had already come across your platform, and the whole idea of looking into archives personally also appeals to me, and like the whole idea of looking back to walk into some new possible futures is what I have come to understand from a lot that you do. I want you to maybe share with us a little bit about are there any methods or strategies that that maybe that you share with the groups that you work with to think about archives, and if there were any interesting discoveries in the process of these methods, would you like to
Yeah, I think especially relevant for us to this conversation, that this whole idea which we are grappling with, I would say, what photograph is versus what is imagery, right? Because in archiving, photographing is also a part of the act of documentation. When memory is missing, one of memory is going to be demolished, or when you want to digitize the physical, and that also becomes an image, but then you also have the photographs itself as an archive. So this distinction between an our PA of time and context. So what you get is that you're looking back in the past, you want to look back in the past, you're trying to make sense of it now for years to come and why it could be relevant. I think the strategies are many because our approach has been very case specific so far. Of course, we do speak about the basic science or discipline of archiving, but then the whole idea of personal archiving, the way we approach it, is to say how does the family read those photographs versus, let's say, a community was holding on to certain photographic archives, or there were photographs which were missing. How does the community want to tell that story versus, let's say, a practice for an artistry, for an architecture practice, look back at its photo documentation. So we do feel that there's a need for these processes or these steps to have a sense of interpretation, what I think both Shilpa and Siti were talking about. And that's where we expand the sense of archiving. So just in a very technical sense of our catalogs have stopped being as small as 5 columns or 6 columns. They're not just about the medium, the material, the size of the photographs. They're also about the keywords, the stories, the oral histories. So this connection between the tangible and the intangible stories or the narratives, they become very important. They stop seeing, which I think also makes our lives very complex, but they stop seeing an article object for itself, which is also a downside. So we do realize that we come down to wanting to tell stories with the bare minimum. They've already now expanded the narrative so much. We've tried to map across different archival items, oral histories, photographs, drawings, books. Now when you want to introduce and just tell a part of the story. So we do go back and forth in these processes with perhaps an intention or with calculatory intent of this is what needs to come out, this is what is being overshadowed. But there is always the larger archive at the backing of it. Sense of discovery, I mean, so much currently, I just want to right now be the current space. We have 11 showcases happening across different cities as a part of something called Constructing Personalities. That's the program which Shruti referred to. It's in its third edition of a movement. I think at least 3 or 4 of 11 projects are highly built on the idea of reading photographs for images in an archive. The collection in Bhavnagar is looking at something as mundane, which some you call mundane, as travel photographs of a family. But the protagonist, the granddaughter of the family who's donated it, has almost culled out a number of values as a legacy type family from those photographs on one hand. On the other hand, we have an archive about the refugee camps or the refugee communities in Andaman and Nicobar Islands of Calcutta. And Raka is talking about how these photographs are not meant for everybody to see because the piece needs to be questioned. So on one hand, we're talking about photographs which need to be made out there, open for everybody to read. They are of his family, they're very personal. They were all about travel and everyday life. But you paint them out that filter, whereas here is the community narrative. The third descendant in the islands don't even really connect with that material. But the research ethics sort of makes us question how are these photographs being read. So the sense of discovery for us is less in the object, but in the process itself, in terms of what is our role, both as archivists and like when we change our hats and we want to curate stories or this allocation for larger audiences to connect with it. And what steps do we take? How careful can we be? And what do we tell? What do we not tell because we are not really sure about it? If somebody else has told us through a old history, recording, or we found some other references, how does now referencing or citation work in a sense of an exhibition? Because these are a publication. But the citation does need to become prominent. So does it become a way of rewriting texts so that it's out there, that there are multiple weekends of the material to see? So I think they're constantly in these stages of unpacking layers of context. Yes.
Thank you. Even to our audience, if you have questions for any of our speakers, please do raise your hands. We would like to make this as interactive as possible. Any questions so far? Anybody wants to ask or say anything at this point? But please feel free to kind of interrupt us. Since we're not the subject of working with communities and family translation, you sort of created not just an interesting creative authoring model, but also this space where people can come to, you know. I also want you to perhaps speak about the South Asian gaze activities that has been sort of it's being promoted a lot more now than it was earlier, and that has happened because of certain initiatives, certain educational institutions like Pathshala, like others within India as well. And not that these homes of art weren't happening here, but it's just that photography has had a very Western sort of gaze overall. And now the South Asian leagues has sort of probably got its moment. Do you agree, or how does something like that get nurtured in a space like Arsham?
I don't know what. I don't want to pinpoint again as a South Asian gaze. I want to call it a post-colonial gaze. So it becomes more broader and more democratic in its own perspective. So how does a space like Shanti Ho gets currently with the larger networks in South Asia? One of the things as keen are the tactics to coach. So the Kudas would and coach gave a plan to invite people from South Asia into Shanti Ho for a series of residency promotions. So this was a learning curve for us where we started looking at artists like it was we were so excited to have Pakistani artists in Shanti Ho because the next day a box came in. Where's your visa? Why are you coming here? Come to the commissioner's office and tell her why you are here. And you go to the commissioner's office and lady says, I'm here to do art. This is what my artist said it done. So then what kind of art are you going to do and all that? It made no sense. But they exactly knew where he is. And they told him to Kanpur or Bangalore. And he was dying to go to Mysore or Karnataka or something. And as soon as he left, he said, you would have to prove to me that he's not hiding me about it. So Imran had to send a WhatsApp message of image of this passport stamped in Karachi, and I had to go to the Commissioner's office to say I am not boasting the Pakistani artist in my tower across it. And this is the way you, and again, what happens? Superpoverty and looking at each other's works, and most importantly, like Basamki had Shahidul had come to Shanti Ho once, and I don't know whether he saw Pop Shiva's work back then, but Pop Shiva was invited to the next edition, and this was exciting for somebody who is a pop and a photographer. So this kind of it's not serendipitous, but it's also that you have to be there. At the right time, there's the right time at the right place. Maybe Shanti Road was the right place. But it also been situations that through residencies, the people, like the work which I wanted to show you all is, like in Gaurit, post-colonial gaze. The questions I've asked is, what do you want to shoot? And you do photographer. And technique is no problem. All of us are great photographers now, thanks to our mobiles. But what is your painting? What is your context? What is the politics of your piece? I think this is what they need to answer through their works. So if artists from Southeast Asia, there is a long association of 3 years from Sri Lanka. We were collaborators with Tita. They brought us a lot of calligraphy of Anolis or Bandhu, and there's the collaborations, moving from one place to another. Isn't it evidently they had to move to Sri Lanka? In some cases, there should be an exhibition which is to uncarving. So you have to devise ways of. We know this. I don't know whether this Jugaad way of mini exhibitions. This is also a South Asian thing, and maybe some have managed to make exhibitions, pop-up things, make sure that the government doesn't trap it down, because you know that at CRA. And all these, I'm not going to tell you this, but I know how to do it. So you learn on the job. How do you be under the radar? So I cannot invite a Pakistani artist just like us. And I cannot, although I love Untapa, go to Pakistan, I mean, visa problem situation. But we've had huge conversations. And we've had collaborations. And if there is a South Asian gaze, I think it's a post-colonial gaze. It also is not only predicting the idea of photography through the archive, through what we've seen that colonialism has done, the photography, and also anthropology being a very important aspect of it. But how do you subvert it as a related to you? What do you do to yourself and to your work to speak to this kind of a gaze which is decolonial and overpowering for a long time? So it's just not about this technique, it's also about what do you represent and what do you want to say in your work. I think as Sapir me teaching in the CKP for a long time. When students show their work, either they're doing incidentally, Proponents was not considered art. Even still, it's only right up, and it's only art. I'm looking at somebody in Bangalore who was only a top about before he cannot call it art. So all these kind of very, very narrow caste divisions that we have photographers have broken. I think they've done more than that. They've done things that rectify all these things of will be used. Ben space art was something that we heard very much later in the 90s. Otherwise, you want to take him up
Can I?
Yes. Yes.
Just to add to this whole idea, Fateh ways to jugaad to address the socio-political borders. All these 3 editions of CPA, Kachapin Personal Archives, we had South Asian piracy things. And one of the things we realized is that we could just keep going online, just so that we could navigate the borders. We didn't want to be in the trap of that, okay, we cannot work with larger South Asian or colonial South histories, because there were so many overlaps in the work that we were doing. And we didn't want either visa or finance as a reason for participants to not be able to develop with each other. Because the primary, the whole of the connection that we are talking about is this community which comes together for dialogue. You could be building archives in your own spaces. So it has come down to a situation this year where one of the participants is wanting to showcase her grandfather's archive in Murray Hills, which is closer to Islamabad. And there's a problem. It's showing that it's happening as a part of CTA, which is hosted by an Indian collective, even though we're not even registered. So you are asking me to register. So what I'm coming to is what Ingu you mentioned, that dropping the hat is equally important. I just had to get on the pod and I had to say we don't need to be mentioned. The project and the history being shown in its place and being preserved there is more important than on a poster mentioning that, okay, this project has happened as CPA and it affects some political sensitivity or it affects somebody's concerns about political relationships. And we were able to address that, and the exhibition will go on in Murray Hills. It will not carry the logos, etc. But I think what I'm getting at is, can the sense of community be more about a collective custodianship rather than who does it belong to and who supported it, and does the name so much matter with also giving utak or anything.
I guess political actually other differentiations terms of the post-colonial piece, so this idea of representation at this moment. And I think that it's got to say it wasn't happening at all before, but I think it can be when to get in with use of clear definitions of photography. And you think that the photograph is the indexical thing that touches a moment, and move it more and more towards now where you have moving further from this, we start to see dual photography is into video photography, moving into the book form, or that is getting highlighted more, which is that not to say pushing insist that it having that particular moment is, but and I think that therefore allows for certain voices that may not have been expressed previously in the medium to possibly for more in terms of thinking about this as lesser colonial or in a post-colonial, but a more local kind of expression that was okay.
Thank you. Thank you for letting that, because that was pretty much where I'd say the thought process had emerged, and I would like to now come to Siddhi, because you kind of bit on something that I was keen to ask from the education institution's perspective, right? As one is, of course, the manager of the institution, the program, and then you as a mentor individually. Now, we were talking about the context of images. We were talking about, I want to ask you, as a new liberal educational institution in the arts, uh, how are you creating room for political thinking and discourse within the curriculum? Because here we are, of course, there are challenges that we all navigate in life. Even when CTB collaborated with a partner in Sri Lanka, we got calls from various bureaucratic government officials as to why the Sri Lankan artists were there, and Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka's history is pretty well known, and what kind of work was being shown. And actually, the work that was being shown was about the protests that had happened, and somehow we had a brave partner like your sponsors Maras that was very keen and open to showing, because all we were doing is showing what was happening out there. And of course, it comes with a certain kind of commentary, but when it comes to maybe how to think and how to see, as a master of athletes, I know it's a loaded question, but I think that's where it also shapes you as a person as we move along.
Okay, yes, big question, and I actually that's so first to come perspective it because
Locating the visuals in a certain historical context. Yeah. So, and I think it's been happened with the Shrishti to it was 9 years now, and like I said, sociologists, trained in a very, conventional social science way, where go out, do work, come back, write in pieces, very text heavy. So I think it's been like mutual learning as a social scientist, where it has historically been text heavy to incorporate the use of visuals and material. And now I think it comes, it's like second nature now, because the visuals and the material objects are no longer just that, but they are, what we choose to surround ourselves with are symbolic areas of meanings, and or you need looking at the the brands you like, set that. So yes, that is unique. That's very way as social scientists, but also for the artist and designer that I've always tell the students that every art design is culturally located space and time, and so that's they need to get, and that is where they can pick up on social science, the humanities, the concepts, the different lenses of which to view the object or the visual. And because this is around meeting photographs, of course, are the visuals that they in category are, but there are lots of material objects are again down. And just enabling with the photograph, the visual, moving away from the visuality of it, for me, it moves away very quickly. And it provides this good other understanding of Atane, people, a pacha, which is much more, if it could be economic, it could social, cultural, technological, historical, and so on. So it leads to all of that. So that is, I think it's been a give and take for me as a facilitator, Shrishti, and students, and we hope that, some of which were able to transmerge, be transmitted to at least. The second part of, political thinking, I was trained in a public university out of my high education. Like I was at a university right from my undergraduate PhD, and now I am teaching in a private institute, a very neoliberal institute in every sense, yeah. So you see the difference. But of course, the private public universities are not hiring anymore. It's not to say that they are problem that is called ad hoc is a house of actions of people. So I've been going on for a while. So it is that. And yes, historically, a lot of political action has started from public universities. But again, it do not give it. They also had to carve out that space sometimes forcefully. So even the place I stay in what any university I was. So rather than political thinking and providing that space, you
teach them to think critically. And if critical thinking done right, I think will address a lot of, how do you question things? And I think this constant questioning and not taking things as they are, here you could have just yet it pass in some students and just leave it to them to be the rest. I think they were being well said, and that's what twice. Through reading, in fact, one of the post on the currently teaching a material that we read Professor Tawada's essay on years here in cash level. And and it showed that Thomas neglected questions like, what is made visible, what is equalized, whatever stuff. The way it's curated to highlight some historical cultural past and also something else. So those are all political questions. Come to British TV or again, just for questioning. Thanks.
Thank you. Our audience, are you still tuned in? Yes? Message.
Hey, one of the most challenging things for photographers to do today is special teaching, or to write a text about one's own work and edit it and probably make it part of your exhibition committee, or even apply for grants, or being navigated the fear, residencies of black or going abroad, coming back, etc. I think this is something that has to be even more focused on in educational institutes and otherwise also in informal spaces. So the two people who have come to Family Code is we've asked them to write. That's it. I can't teach you photography, but can you write about your own work and unmute yourself? What are you kind of say? What is your concern and what is the subjectivity? I think this is so important in this, and I think there are many photographers who are excellent photographers who can't definitively think have a problem. So I think this is something that one needs to equally.
Just to add that my the language is very important. You can get you to detect. I mean, you may not write someone else to be, but just be yourself, could keep it to reset on your process as artist. I'm sure you may not agree with me, but coming from the other side, also imaging with artist designers, I feel language is important. So that leads me this movement from sketches to language, back to pictures, and there needs to be a lot of cross reference.
Mostly at a studio, student with us. And he was that is the era. Someone walked into the studio and you said, oh, yeah, isn't it? Why? It's also but start with like this photographic immediately. What is the thing then? Why you wanting emergency to work at? Got very excited, went back home, and then he sends a video of this electric shock of this laptop by catching fire, and he took video did the laptop burst. So it's like you guys stopped to me, pull it, what do I see? And I wanted to see what would happen. And yeah, but you really literally took it to another extent. So yeah. I would call Rocky his botticism with photography and the madness that the urgency brings to it. That's how the trend has been. I often just mention it that back in the day, I had started working as a freelance photojournalist, and that is my initiation into this medium. And I'm not a trained photographer. I was in advertising before, so I could write, I would say, reasonably well, then I could do a bit of storytelling. And I thought, okay, photography and and text would all work together. It did for a certain while, and then I felt very lost with the medium, because pretty much a lot of the sort of concerns or context, a lot of concerns about what are you actually trying to say, who is it for? I mean, are you doing this for yourself so that your name gets published in publication?
or are you really trying to work with certain communities? And frankly, once I stopped photography, which has been about 8-9 years now, I have learned more about photography then than when I was actually on the field. So there's something about leading, there's something about immersing yourself in certain communities very quietly as an observer and working with them. I think that has taught me personally a lot versus just going about the emergency of making the next work that I could out there. But that takes us to actually a very interesting conversation on slowness and the great need to slow down, because I think doom scrolling is a word that we might all be familiar with, and I think many of us are addicted, or I am guilty of it for sure. I sleep with my phone, I wake up with my phone and never without my phone. So there's something about the whole idea of having a gadget and its immediacy in our lives that is counterproductive to a lot of the things that we actually want to immerse ourselves in. So, Edu, I want to come back to you because somewhere Kanike's studio has evolved on the very core idea of slowness. You know, a lot of his practice is embodied in the core idea of slowness. Could you maybe share a little more as to why you all felt that was important, especially in a time where the world was moving very fast? And how you sustain slowness also in these times?
So, as you rightly pointed out, one of the core values of Kanike is deeds. If there is a process that takes us about a year to learn, we village second part. I don't know how we came about it. I think there was this over influx of digital media. He is constantly seeing too much of digital images, and something very much lacking was this idea of touch. Making these images just by your hand, you're poking a paper, you're seeing and you're washing, you're seeing the smiley monkey eyes on the beauties actually is something that he wanted to bring back. So we really worked hard to see how can he bring back this whole lot of Tauki, and today I think we very confidently say can teach up to Rekanti code processes, and soldered paper prints is one of the processes which takes close to 8 hours to make one print. And we were very excited, oh wow, it takes 8 hours to just see your image. And that's the bit of excitement. All creators are constantly excited. We keep learning, the various books, and a lot of the books on these motivative slow processes are Western. So the moment we bring it to India, we have to adjust to the humidity of the climate and all of that. We have Shami Ketan, Studio Coco, Arpan is part of Studio Coco, and he learned a lot from him as well. But we realized there's something so beautiful about being slow. And one of the reasons why it started clay as well, we do a lot of photography on clay and ceramics. This led to do one of the sculpture of college in the Kodo of the Perkian ceramics. It takes you a very good 4 to 5 days to see one pot, let's say. So we started seeing there's a beauty to it, and sometimes it may crash, but that's, you just leave it up to how it gets interpreted later. And everything I think what we embrace in studios just slow down. When we are there, they give up pots away, you all engage in like city and topic I thought. Monte put chai is happy. But there is a beauty to let space in. Yes. Take the chai. We make it, but that is a very nice jacket to style. He's opened a little shop, so this walk to the chai shop also was quite nice, and then walk back as well. So we're like, oh, that pizza thing will look good, let's just go there. He do that as well. That's something.
I'm going to come to a little tangent, on our slowness and these senses of reform, and how the museum has also become a home for the community and for personal dialogue. And I'm more interested in also understanding that within this kind of institution that is trying to be a home, what are the instruments of care that are also being taken to kind of look into um, that are taken into consideration around the personal but in a very arcade space.
I think I'll actually just start off sharing where Angel started on Stoner Pulitzer just this morning. A colleague of mine sent me an article that appeared in the Art Space before, which was actually talking about institutions slowing down, globally museums slowing down, some propelled by economic factors like post-pandemic and the engagement of visitors post-pandemic in relation to the number of staff and so on, and bandwidth issues therefore, but also towards global kind of looking at why you're doing what you're doing or how much you want to do something. And for me, the interesting thing, which I think I wake up to your question, was somewhere at the article also talking about a study that the Chicago Museum done, the Army Institute in Chicago, around how much time people said, 18 of the said with. And your topic was like people who were responding to these changes in millions visitors who are happy with this. So somebody who was quoted as a member of CAPE who was unhappy that with their paid membership because they had one exhibition for 7 months that they attended figure. So every time they went, that was an exhibition were gone. In their opinion, put long, right? And I think it's interesting because when there comes to map and thinking about this question of home or belonging or trying to be a space for many different sorts of individuals who also are, in a larger context of thinking about me, it's in India where one is now program newer narratives. They're not taking at these places or media space, but taking around those displays of the hundred bodies that those audiences can be. He taking care of the visitor. It's interesting because I think we have also the two kind of picture over your steps. That in some sense, because I know this question is externally reflective, then I will come to that. But it can also make sense to sometimes internally reflect that because you pick up a lot of, there's a lot of invisible labor in the sphere by and large. Even when Suresh is talking about Machati, there are people on and people are there. But there is still labor that goes into PQOP. There is still a lot of things are now really those vacancies that also take overlapping in the man hustle work of what it needs to keep producing. For artists, but also institutions, other agents in this exercise. But I think to your question in terms of instruments of hair that a museum space or an institution like had provide, I think we do it in a couple of different ways. Map this, set up this other relative focus apart from education, from search times or the inclusion and accessibility. So we had the opportunity since we were building the museum from scratch to really ensure the physical accessibility was part of the design and the plan to the museum, and not just in terms of what legal requirements, which are quite low in India, to be honest, the standards. But to either we have a committee, look at what could be required, go a little bit above and beyond, and I think that's a part which kind of always traversing. So in some sense, we used to do with the physical infrastructure or is available for people is as care. We have acquired a promo, we try to offer, and it takes a daily growing kind of like journey for us on that. And the other sense of thinking about, and he tested the refuge my skins as well, which was a project that he did as part of a larger global web of trust initiative, which was looking at the intersections between arts, mental health, and well-being. Intu was a resident on the concert, and then her work, including she started Namabadi at that point, and then the work also became an exhibition at the museum. But it also spawned a lot of different educational initiatives. We produced an art-of-work proof kit, and we've been very interested in looking at the sustainability of these projects. Right? So they start and then they end, but how we could take you to build on that work. So this last year we kind of take a napkin kit, and then we developed a series of art and well-being modules for children, for adolescents, for educators, We're designing a game for kids actually that can kind of think about these narratives in terms of how more reflective emotional awareness can be built using art. And I think there are those kinds of titles, projects, and initiatives where we're kind of looking at care or this idea of belonging through the work itself. And then occasionally there's always the idea of the programming and outreach, which is really about engaging with those people and creating that kind of stakes, right? Take a second. There is no universal home for everybody. And so with each of those audiences that we're picking in, how can we build not just engagement that suit their needs or the head them, but also support what it is they would like to do with us. So we're running something that is part of our programming for visible digital, which is our recognition based around representation of part, representation of women art, sorry. And as part of that, we run a program that is on self-tell initiatives. It allows people to propose to us what they would like to use us as map as a resource for. And it has such a wide range of like programming around it. You have like a queer tango group that comes and does tango in our in the museum. We've been working with students at CPB who are getting portfolio reviews from Shamdavani and other artists. So there's a lot that can then maybe happen outside is not just like the digital space of the visitor. I mean, there is a lot that goes into that as well as their experience, but also thinking of Benapni cultivate differently for everyone because there isn't critical those that could get by under a practice. Yes, please.
Just a question whenever there is a right time.
Now a right time as any other.
I really appreciate. First of all, thank you very much to all the eminent finalists for taking the time out and to encourage a deep conversation about something we all love. My name is Amit Sharma. I've been an image maker for about 25 years now, educator, and also on a job with Laika Canary India. And something which often comes up in my conversation with photographers, a bit of my own internal dialogue, that how time plays a function in recontextualization of work. That we have been, and in fact my couple of questions that I have are interweaved into all the conversations that were taking place, is that when we go out and photograph, the context is the hero, the image comes later. Whereas the function of time changes there. We have seen in curations more and more that the family archives are seen as artifacts rather than simply old family photographs. How does that happen, of course? And then, of course, is how to get out of this dichotomy of having an intent first and then something which I feel personally is that there is something sacred about photography, which is an element of chance. I think photography is the only medium that kind of relies on chance, and which I feel is more and more being challenged in contemporary photography, where we feel that, except look, it won't take this image. It happened, and so on and so forth. So we keep having these dialogue of intent versus being an excellent photographer or an understander of the medium. How, as curators, you see that when work comes in front of your eyes. I hope my questions are clear, but if you can sort of go some light on this, no, it won't be busy. That what function does stunning play, especially from an archival side of things? And secondly, recontextualizing what I will photograph next week or next month versus me relying completely on this inner creative self, which may be mobilized at some flight of a fancy bird. Or I hope you get my question. I can replace it, but please.
Yeah, it was first part. Yes. I think that I'm very accurate answer, but I just don't practice of the experience. I think it's a play of memory and not really yours. I just already pretty, but what we are understanding through any medium, not just photographs, any card work, any drawing, building drawings, or when we look at oral history, they are responding to a certain context of time and space, but memory plays its own game on us. So what I'm referring to is even if I had taken a photograph 5 years ago, because it was the pandemic, it was very important to make that dish and censor it that day, whatever it was. But 5 years down the line, I'm feeling differently about it.
So it changes,
So
it becomes something else.
Yes, it's my own reflection of my experience. Even I've seen in oral histories, people want to be very accurate about it. So they cross check the family members around, aisa hua tha na us din, but they will still have a line or two where the meaning may have changed. So over here, memory against time is trying to make its own meaning. It might have felt a certain thing in 2020 and it feels differently in 2025. It's something happening here for the person that sets. So now when a researcher or even somebody who is an external party to the act of making it looks at it, now it's second or the third layer of reading into information. We do try as archivists to be as factual. Okay, we're seeing such grass lights, we're seeing such a building, it must be this type, must be this, but histories are not black and white. So while I might say Art Deco in Bangalore is this year, but they are Art Deco waiting before and after, or they might give it them. So that's where the brain is start seeping in, and the narrative takes over the acts, is how we see the archives.
And I think to add to what is the same, there's also a question of spectatorship for me here. I mean, there is the artist in depth that you talked a lot and not just in, but there is a conversation that happens between the artwork and the spectator. Whether that's the curator, the researcher, archivist, somebody in a gallery, somebody else altogether. But I think there is the meaning making happens a little bit in that area. And this question of time is interesting because I was thinking particular videos that you talk about photography, an example around that where we have done a show. So MAP, we have been quite fortunate to have been gifted this collection of T.S. Akin's photographs.
Yes, no, I've seen it, yes.
Yes, so if you came for the exhibition, there was one photograph which is really this father with his kid who is hanging clothing on a rubber tire. And it looks like they're just sewing on bottom. And if you look at his notes and his captions, you realize this is touchpads and so on. But when you look at just the image, you look just at the photograph, their expressions, the surroundings, nothing indicates a moment of violence of any kind, which it is. Yeah. But what it actually almost seems like is that we are in a little bit of a gentle moment with Balabai Shahid, right? And I think that scene of what I see, what I know of the context of this image, those are different things. And knowing that can inform over time my artistic, the facts as Ishita put it, or the narratives that we not even be founded necessity or cash, but I am pretty aware of. And then only the image, right? The visual itself at what exactly communicating me. But I think even to what you were saying, Shruti, is I think personal, right? You bring your sets into that equation. So it is informed by not just your knowledge, but also your experiences, what you relate to and what you associate with. So I think it's not just time. And over time, other kinds of questions come up, right? You look at Samuel Bond photographs that they start thinking about our stickers really that for scale, one ends could at the around, because they're really large buildings and the tiny Indians that use it too, right? So they open a few questions I think over time because that means the world around has changed. That's my line.
Thanks. Tati, I wanted to come to you because you work with such young people all the time, and how is it working with them, and kind of course, the whole idea of contextualizing histories and the whole idea of work or labor or whatever it is with photography, and also the slowness that is important in that work. How is that? How do you navigate that? Because very cast brains, and also brains that are being loaded with so much information that before we got in here, Shilpan and I were just discussing and how just doing so many programs, whether it's a biennale or whether it's an institution, what is that also doing to us as the creator of the programs, plus how is the audience responding to it? And I think I want to understand from this particular demographic, like what's happening then.
But just quickly, I completely agree with you in saying that kind does add earlier commitment to objects and programs you want here. And even in academics, but the interest taken in the visuals is coming much after when the business established. In history, they didn't consider the visuals as a very reliable source. Or even in sociology, the anthropologist like Cowdish spoke to the teacher, like this man, learning the dandy, spoke as if taking a visual record of it. But it has come and, it has its own merits, but it's just like the world's work here. So, yes, what time does something to it. But I think it's the interpretative possibility that the visual makes possible. I think which is what it's the increasingly fluid in the academics, yes, but also exhibition disorder. But now you're also nothing with AI.
And then everything else that is this impacting along. So, yeah, but please continue.
So, of course, students, undergrad students mostly, not mostly, but also like teach also research methods in the social sciences. So, the PhD scholars come in what way? Some methodological understanding. So, visual ethnology, the trained and the sociologist and the ethnographic method is what I did. And it was a slow memory. He said, we were told to just drop everything and go out and be in the field for a year just to understand the process. It's a participant locomotion because people may not always do what they tell you, and they may not always tell you what they. So this idea that you speak to them would also serve them in that natural settings. So ethnography is something that is very popular with art mosaic students. It's a qualitative method. You can speak people, some can also just passively observe them. So often in Srishti, our Paul is master class. Now I'm not completely at ease with those because I'm like I have done this over a prolonged period and it won't be coming for a day and just tell them about ethnography and how do you do it. But also then this idea of design ethnography and the dirty practice is there amongst anthropologists. So Jason, I'm not eating the term dirty in an aggressive way because, and also not to sound like a curious 78 key or a tourist. RP, there are situations that only the designers mostly, they need information. They don't need to understand the culture of society with a guy. It just can be very focused. Or there maybe just spend a few days, ask very direct questions and come back. So it's quick and dirty in that sense. So you tell them yes that okay this is ethnography, the collaboration. But what you are most likely if they say going to be constrained by time, they say I more than 6 years to do my PhD. I know someone need I not it either I have tried more. So we had the luxury of time, which designers do not. So they do it in a much huckster-picker way. But the idea is to tell them that okay, these are the ethics when you're talking to someone. How do you ask questions? Like for astronauts, speak to someone who is at work, with that bothering. We ask for time and we try and move around it in a way that could suit their practice rather than saying, okay, I have to be with the PG for a year. So try and bring in some sort of methodological pendants, which I think design is also trying to integrate into it. There has to be some sort of method that was designed as it is. The earlier guide for research was this idea that it's research that has no memory. It starts a new project and it ends with it. But if you leave something behind and someone else can refer to it as the resource, I think that would be of great help. But sort of also integrate a lot of the research and dive in it. That are gone in by somebody.
for.
Can I add something to that? As a economic distorter and an educator, I think the dirty research is problematic. And it's okay if you don't have nothing opinion, but I do feel, and this person has a trajectory that being a designer, a student, I did practice much of design in Pedagogy specialist, and then having worked in a cultural space, see the problematics, even from students have agreed, some of them would work with us, that very small window of meeting a community, getting data, unknowingly becoming extractive in the process is definitely very problematic, and perhaps that's a larger question for pedagogies. But where I'm going with this is that it does sort of speak to the border that they live in. So the dirty research is much earlier, the fast research is not coming from insensitivity, but perhaps this rush to have to build and produce and make. If that wasn't perhaps imposed, I think the pedagogy would have responded differently. Can there be more slowness, emotion, even at an education level and not just at a practice level?
Yes.
This means after the meeting of topic, what they said early on, you like the Kinsey Hatton journalism. You or Hatton Kinto community take choreograph and head up. Teacher, trying to understand the compact your question of intent. When you call chance, a chance for you versus chance only making food. So when you say, oh, I see a chance, what does that mean? You need really a train moving a certain way might chance. But is it like people related? That it's out of conversation you are there. So I feel like we've had all about this to say, but you want to come to Namakade, you want to take some photos and tickle and both. We will call it parachute artist. Because you just parachute into the space, use the community, they should not be out there. That they come with these 1 lakh, 2 lakh cameras, which make a lot of people that you material for and it's this very awkward for them to see there with his camera. So always understand, I think I completely say no to people who say you want to come to this photograph and what is this community? Why is it one is an exotic idea of one and what makes it so exotic for you? Because I think all of these are conversations for us to broadly ask why are you attracted to take photograph of this particular person? Especially when it comes to people, I think this is very important. Even when I started Runability, I got to the Anganwadi system for at least 4 to 5 years to then understand that these Anganwadi systems were not as democratic as I wanted it to be. The teachers would be like, oh, now is this particular party ruling, so this business has to happen. And I can be very comfortable working in the Anganwadis when the stand of the kind. So then I started I wanted it to be completely democratic. Anybody and everybody can walk into the space. I just still remember this conversation, Harry, where there was this, a lot of people came and said, good Lord Shiva's photo, to Takshki's photo. And I said, I don't want a religious identity to this place. Anybody can come. I put a mirror. I said, Poco walks in, becomes their own board. And then the Lord of you at least money and then I'm starting the culture, just what was happening. But that's open up at still pages, and anybody and everybody goes into their space. But also, like, it takes a lot of time into the space. And I was also in the initial status of using the medium, I will also have this idea of journalistic, going to community photograph, and now find how problematic that works. So today, if I'm working in the community, I said, Sham, I put 4 houses there and stayed there for many years. And they had and then think about photograph. That's of course the right.
Yeah, any like last questions, because I think it's time for coffee, perhaps. Lot of chatting, and the chatting can continue. Yes.
Great conversations. I just curious about then so especially related to TV. So you ask a photographer and these trying to put people in writing, you change the frame of reference is here too. And so that the writing comes below and reactions on there, and does that added in English, and because really important. So other education is built on English or own languages, other references. So it's a great idea. So does it what are the word it comes with? As I was I know English. Any writing the mother tongue, they know kind conceptual frameworks to do. So it's a double by the photography. And another thing for it, sometimes at the photography except is celebrated conscious. And then many times you go to items to but that is the this person was not only slowness but the silence is missing related.
I think language is not other language plays a very important role. If the person articulates in the mother tongue is perfectly alright. As long as he's articulating and expressing he was what he wants to say.
Well, I'm just curious about the processes with the person will go.
Practice at the always like junior my students wrote like even writing but what do you do? Others ask it to express themselves.
In the questions, in answers questions, please ask.
Reaction to what we might have said.
I can perhaps make an attempt to make a question based on Sir's comments about
The limitation of the language. I think one of the functional part is to perhaps cross over the value of language, as Nan talked about is Satya's photograph, which in fact Sarkowski always says that the photograph is the thing itself. And I think we have now, after a number of years, we can see that the photograph is it's not the thing itself, but it can be other things. So I think the language sometimes creates a definitive perspective, which perhaps may not be the best outcome, you know. So how would you, Suresh was mentioning, or again, critical thinking and writing. Do you think that writing about our own work, it gives us the capacity to understand ourselves better? And at the same time, it robs the viewer of making their own sort of a narrative versus, you know, like how much hampering should the viewer be given? Yeah, please.
I think you need to say what you want to say as a Buddha. Write a text which is going to introduce your work to the audience and also leave space to the audience with their procure work. But you don't have to feed everything into the artworks. So, but most importantly, you need to articulate what is your context. We want to say that your work, when it is formal properties, it's studio property, it's fine. People that admire it for light or whatever, decisive moment, and be happy with it. But how do you go beyond it?
Usually, like when I walked into an exhibition, I try not to read the text first. So it was just to see if I can understand. And if I'm down enough not to understand, then I go back to UK text as to how. So I think really it makes me understand the artist a little better. Like I think that people who personally connect to the artist and I know their story as well. And I think this is just like, you know, in therapy, every therapist will ask you to just journal your thoughts. Very similar. So I think with your work, I mean, I journal every day, a morning, going in, what I'm doing on an everyday basis, just to understand myself. I think that's just like a regular everyday practice and need not be language. Sometimes I'm just drawing. Sometimes I'm just sticky things. Copies, you build that cape that day. I would just like stick that say this is what I've got. It's just about like, I'm trying to understand myself. And I think to our work, you're also trying to understand why you're working as a way.
your Raspberry.
The
night belongs to you.
After starting with this, one of the things we have discovered in the last few years of Braille exhibition system on seen language as something structured. So what you were mentioning, that two lines can be in English and the next two lines can be in Gujarati and one word there can be in Hindi. And similarly, language with images and videos, they can intersperse. And that's become a way to communicate. So going back to first, what does your archivist or the filmmaker or the photographer want to say? Let it be a little more unstructured, let it be all a style, a fresh opinion about your work, and then leaving the responsibility on the audience. This is the question which we didn't come to. In most of our exhibitions, we do claim it rather that we have left it open-ended, we have left it with questions, we have left it with lack of structure, because the audience or the reader also has a responsibility. Everything should not be strict, so it's served to you. Archives are in front of you, read them, and they read something, and if it makes sense to you, you make those interconnections. You could play with those possibilities of engaging the audience rather than irrelevance. And that's when unstructured it really plays out and allows you to be yourself in terms of language.
I mean, Eric is going to say something very similar to what Rishta was saying at the end. This idea of not having absolutes, right? But was possibly Kawaii context that still allows manipulation. And to be very honest, we get a very chatty, we get that chatty discussion now. People like to talk, which is great to see. So we don't have that, that idea of the museum at this quiet, secret place where you're hushed up all the time. And I think photography I found very interestingly in other exhibitions with photography and textiles, both of these things that people I think are more familiar with, more comfortable with, they are fairly comfortable giving opinions. So I have heard people discuss it amongst themselves. People have sum up to me, I told you already saw this photo, whether they like it, don't like it, so on, why, they don't think it really, it's not really so big a deal, because so it's actually very nice to see people do that. Even within structures, right, there's not necessarily room for them to be like they can, which is what you want to encourage.
The instrument of the work is that it's just the images of legs. And I have always people writing to me on Instagram and saying, I tried to locate my father whose legs, and I think my cousin's leg is in the picture. The work is so deliberate. It's talking about something very, very intense and powerful. But it's also nice because being it read as to what the work is, that you say, oh, that leg, who's that person? No, that person has this mode on his leg. The total conversations of legs. But that was not English of the work, so that's also interesting. Look at that. So, yeah, that's what I think about that.
Just to, although we can enjoy my identity to Ayurvedic, but there's this entomologist, Ariel Azule, and she's said there are three parties to this contract he talked. What is the talking one? The photographed and the audience, who at that time is not there. But, last part of the evening comes from the audience. And I was about to kind of bring in a souvenir at the end, but I'm doing that. I think on that note, these are conversations that will never end. And thank you, all of you, the high camera me,
I'm very excited about everything that we have been able to bring forward today. There were quite a few other tests that I had. Of course, there is a bit less time for all of them. But hopefully, we just continue these conversations in other forms and maybe find ways to collaborate with each other to keep these conversations going. You have the opportunity to meet with everyone here. There is access here. There is a lot of conversation over coffee that can be had. And thank you all for being such a wonderful audience. And I would applaud you for being very engaged through this, I would say, slightly deep conversations that we've had today. And as the final parting note, please book your tickets. We were really tough to have all of you there. It's not too far. You did write down, you did take a bus. If you're not getting tickets, you reply down if you give 4 replies. But do come. It's on till the 16th. They can drive. Yes, okay. And thank you.
And thank you to Nicobar and its wonderful team that's actually made all of this possible in various cities. So thank you all.